was where I was kicked out of my body. And I wasn't aware of any of this. This was private between her, Andrew, and her husband.
Right.
And so it was interesting to get this feedback. She said he did not want to go because he was worried about me. And Andrew talked him into going, and he wouldn't go unless I came to see where he was. And he was putting all of these, and when you know this man and who he used to be a naval diver, that is exactly what he would do in life. He was not going to sign on the dotted line until he knew exactly what was involved in the fine print. That was this man to a T. And so what was actually arranged was that she went with them. All three went together so that she could see where he was. And she said they travelled and travelled for a long time. And she said, I can't remember all of it, but she said, I know it was a beautiful place. And then he agreed to stay there as long as he could come back any time when I really, really needed him. And that's when it was all arranged, and then I came back and I woke up on the table. Well, she booked in for another treatment a fortnight later, not because she was in need of grief recovery, but because she also discovered that her arthritis was like 75% improved from that one treatment.
Wow. And
so she rang and made another appointment. And we were having a bit of a problem at the time with a man who was trying to rip us off, over fixing of our bore pump. And my daughter and I were sitting talking about this fellow and how we were going to handle the situation when this lady arrived. And I told her she was Gutsy Sheila before she'd lost her husband. And she came to the door, and she was the old Gwen, exactly like we'd always known her. And she sat there and she said, she was telling us, don't you let these bastards rip you off. Like she was right back to it. And we just looked at her and we said, Gwen, you're back. And she chuckled and she said, yes, she said, and all my friends and neighbours think I'm over it because I've got a boyfriend. But I learnt so much from that. That was really interesting. So then, see, these things happened without me being instrumental. They were just situations that were just happened to pop up in my career. And I thought about it, and I thought about it after she left, and I knew I'd seen Andrew, so I asked, and I got confirmation, if I was working this way, could I call Andrew in to assist me? And I got a very clear and concise yes. So since then, when there's been situations like that, when I'm doing my summoning, and I summon a lot of different entities, the elemental archangels and the spirit guides of my client, I also bring in. I also ask for any of their ancestors who have the spiritual, emotional or physical well-being of my client at heart to please be welcome to join the healing circle. I call in, this is a very special hill I live on, and there are indigenous guardian spirits here, so I invite them in as well, and the David Councils of Nature, and so we've got a big healing circle around the table. It's interesting to note that many of my clients actually ask me, they say, oh, I saw pillars of light moving around the table, and that's great confirmation for me. I can see them too sometimes, but sometimes what I perceive and what the client perceives are different, because I'm focusing on the client and they're just laying there just taking it all in. So they're actually probably even more aware than I am of what's going on around the table. But I find that really interesting. And with all of the clients that I have dealt with who had a dreadful time over the grief and the loss and not got over it, it is because the spirit hasn't gone. And the spirit needs to go. It doesn't matter how loving or close, like Andrew and I, we were very, very close when he was alive. They still need to go on to complete their karmic journey. It doesn't mean to say they can't come back and keep an eye on us. I've had heaps of people giving me interesting stories that back that up.
So when you say they have to go, is that what people often refer to as crossing over? They have to cross over?
Yes, they have to cross over.
And they can still come back
They
for
obviously
visits, or...
can. I don't know the book of rules. I'm only telling you it the way that I have discovered it.
So they're better off, if somebody's grieving, they're better off to tell their loved one to go and cross over and then come and visit them.
Yes, exactly. That is exactly what happened to my friend Gwen. I had a good laugh about it because they had a property, and this man, of course, was an engineer, her husband, and he didn't teach her anything mechanical, you know, the things that she needed to know, and their pump broke down, the pump that provides the water to irrigate the whole garden from their dam, and she knew that it was just a simple job, and going up, being a farm woman, I suspected it lost the head in the pump, so she just needed to reprime it. And she said she used to see him head off down there with a bucket and a few tools, so she figured that it's got to be fairly straightforward. So this was 2 years after I gave her the treatment. And the first I heard about it was she rang me and she said, I've got to talk to you because I've got something to tell you and I can't tell anybody else on the planet except you. And so I met up with her and we had lunch. She said that... she headed off to the pump with her bucket and her tools, not knowing what to do, and she tinkered and played around with it and had no idea what she was doing. And she got, you know, she's gutsy Sheila, this one. So she says, she steps out of the pump shed and she flings her arms up into the air and she says, I'm not going to say names because it's private, and she called out his name and she said, where are you now that I need you? And she said, and then his voice came, I'm right here. And she swung round and he was leaning against the pump shed. And he talked her through how to service the pump.
Wow.
And how to put the head in. And she could not wait to tell me. She said she knows how to do it now. And he apologised for being remiss and not showing her before he passed away how to do it.
So this is incredible. This means...
This is real. This is why I don't want to read books and get anybody else's wisdom, because my own experiences have been a profound learning curve.
So it sounds like if someone is in need of grief recovery and, you know, they bring someone like yourself in to help convince their loved one that it's keeping them in grief, the living in grief while they're around, maybe that's just part of the equation. Do you think that just... I mean, there's a lot of psychics, good psychics in the world at the moment, travelling the world, who just bringing that comfort to know that your loved one is still alive in, you know, some other state, in spirit, yeah.
I think they're more likely to find out that they're still alive in spirit by letting them go. You see, with Gwen's situation, she thought she was crazy. This is where our Western society doesn't cover this problem of this spiritual connection. I mean, it was a great ending for her, you know. It's not an ending, it's a continuation. With the business with the pump, she knew that if she ever really, really was in need, then she could call him back and he could come to help her.
But before she came and got the treatment with you,
she didn't even believe in the spirits.
That's right,
yeah.
Okay. So your treatment facilitated her vision of her loved one, her letting go of the grief, and I think part of that is knowing that they haven't actually disappeared from your life, but they're in another place and they're safe and they're well, and they just want to know that you're okay, so sometimes they hang on.
That's right.